I've got a lot to say about this game, American Fugitive, and not a lot of it is good. What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video and welcome to one of my Platinum Trophy reviews. In this series, what I do is I take a look at a game, I give you my opinions of the game, and I also tell you my experiences of earning the Platinum Trophy and finishing the game to the fullest. I spend a lot of time with these games, I really see them through to the bitter end at times, and I share it with you and I tell you some stats about how I found earning the Platinum Trophy and if I'd recommend it to you as well. But before we begin and dig into the trophy details, we have to talk about the game, we have to review the game. Now let's just talk about what actually is American Fugitive, because when I first picked it up I thought it was going to be sort of like a roguelike game where, you know, you break out of prison every time and you just spend time exploring and evading the police, and you kind of do that a little bit. The name is sort of like kind of misleading because although you are an American fugitive, it has not a great deal to do with actually the gameplay or anything. It's basically just an over-the-top open world game, sort of like, think GTA 1 or 2 but remastered into today's age, and that's pretty much the game you get. Before we dig into the story and gameplay, which are the biggest sections of this review, I want to talk about the graphics. And the graphics look pretty good. It came out in 2019. It's an indie game by an indie developer named Fallen Tree Games. And now these devs, I haven't seen them make anything else. I haven't heard of them before this game, so I'm not sure if this is their first attempt or not. It's a cartoony style game which, you know, holds up well. It runs at a pretty smooth frame rate. I'd probably say it's about 30. But it isn't too difficult to obtain because there isn't that much going on the screen at any one time. All in all, there's not a great deal to say. It's not amazing graphics, it's not lackluster, it's pretty okay graphics for an indie game. There's no spoilers in this video other than the opening 5 minutes of the game. It just sort of tells you, it puts you in an idea as to what the story is about, and that is pretty much, I'm just going to read word for word what I wrote in my notes when I was making notes, and I wrote this. Someone kills your dad, and you are blamed for it. So you break out of prison and go on a crime spree, killing hundreds of people to clear your name of murdering your dad. Lol, what a story. Those are my actual notes, and that is pretty much the game. You spend your whole time trying to prove that you didn't kill your dad, and in doing so, you rob people's houses, you kill hundreds of police officers, you kill hundreds of people, and it is just kind of crazy. The story doesn't really make sense to the game that it's trying to deliver, but it's sort of like the Uncharted thing where, you know, Nathan Drake's this really nice guy but he kills hundreds and hundreds of mercenaries. It's kind of like this but dialed to 11. Now there's no voice acting in this game, which is fine. It's a low budget game clearly, and, you know, voice acting costs a lot of money, and so it's all text dialogue, which is okay, but the problem with that is it's a bit bland, everything's a bit boring, the characters don't really stand out. I personally think the story's pretty lackluster. I think most people will struggle to get the end of this 10 to 12 hour story just because it's so repetitive and it's so boring. Now this is an open world game. It's a small open world consisting of only 3 different islands. Each island's about maybe 2 or 3 square miles, and there's a loading screen in between, which is not really that good considering it was made in 2019. They must have been using a really underpowered engine to make this game because most consoles could run that open world no problem. So the way the game works is you basically have contacts, just like Grand Theft Auto. You know, they have a letter for their name and you go to them and you do missions for them, all in all trying to clear a name. You know, some of them are working with some scumbags, some are working with like loan sharks, some are working with like the mafias, and you think that sounds really exciting, but it really isn't. The missions are very, very underwhelming. They consist of things like collecting donuts, taking bags of rubbish to the dump, cleaning someone's house, stealing cars and robbing people, and every now and then there's an odd shootout thrown in there, and it's just so basic, and it kind of highlights just how shallow this game actually is, which will lead us finally and well onto the gameplay. Now the gameplay is broken up into a few sections. You've got your driving, you've got your stealth mechanics, which involves robbing people's houses and robbing stores, then you've got your gunplay, and that is pretty much the entirety of the game. So the gunplay is okay, you know, it's an over-the-top game, it runs okay. There's not actually a lot of actual shooting involved in the main story. It's actually very far and few, unless you go on like rampages. Rampage! Killing police officers, which is, you know, easy enough to do. It's okay, it's good enough. I'm not going to criticise the gunplay too much. It's probably one of the stronger aspects of the game. Now the driving again is okay. It's hard, it's fun to start with, but it takes a lot of mastery to actually be able to drive at speed. And the ultimate problem is the fact that the camera's just too close to the cars. So for me, when you get into the car, the camera should span out by at least 10 to 20%. When you're driving at speed, in cars, traffic's coming into you, they're just so hard to avoid. And yeah, the game sort of, the way the map's made, there's not really any big straights, and that's probably done on purpose, so you don't have too many high speed collisions, so you can't reach too high of a speed. But you can easily get 160, 170 miles an hour, although it doesn't feel like you're going that fast at all. It feels like you're going like 60. But the driving's okay, it's just a bit slippy, and it's a bit sort of like everything's slidey. The game's sort of like half of it's on pavement and half of it's on like back roads, but the whole game feels like the roads feel like they're on back roads and the back roads feel like you're just driving across ice. It is such a slippy game, which you can see by all of this footage. Now, the house burglary system is like a sort of mini game system where you break into someone's house and you can steal stuff and you have so much time before the police arrive. Or robbing the stores, you basically go into a store and you are given a percentage, which is the chance you have of robbing the store. So for example, if you go in with your bare hands, you might have a 20% chance of robbing the store. If you go in with a crowbar, you might have 60%. If you go in with an AK, you might have 90%. And that's sort of how it works. It's an okay idea, but it feels like they've added it because they didn't want to make a real game, because it's sort of like you just move from section to section and it feels very like basic. And it's also a bit ridiculous when you go to rob an old lady with like an AK-47 and she's unarmed and she overpowers you and throws you out the house and takes your AK-47. It is a bit silly. There's also, what I was reading, is a lot of issues with the police system. So you get wanted levels just like in GTA. It goes from 1 to 6 stars. 6 stars is when the big boy tanks come out to get you, which was actually a free DLC. And there was a lot of criticism in the forums about the police system being all over the place, it being like, you can't get anything done because as soon as you move you get 4 stars, you've got police chasing you all the time. Now, I want to say I think this has been patched. I've done a bit of reading and it's not as bad, but it is a bit ridiculous. Sometimes you like drive across and kill like 4 pedestrians and nothing will happen, and you drive across, say, hit a brick wall and you get 3 stars, and the police can be quite annoying to shake, especially when you don't have any fast cars and you find yourself hiding in bushes. It just sort of really does slow down the immersion of the game. Also, some levels will be like, can you just go spray paint a car, and on the way there you'll accrue stars from the police in wanted levels just because you want to get there fast to do the level. And you find sometimes like a 4-minute level will be 10 minutes because you're just trying to lose the police all the time, and it is quite annoying because it's not really that fun. And there's this weird thing where you can just change clothes, so you can kill the police officer if he's by himself, and just take his clothes and then your wanted level's gone. Or you can go into a house and steal like a dress and just put a dress on and your wanted level's gone. It's a bit of a cop out because it does make it a lot easier, and when you learn this, it does sort of devalue the wanted system. So what are my general thoughts of the gameplay? I just thought it was all okay. I just think the issue is the story is so lackluster and it's very, very shallow. And the thing is, when you think of games, open world games like GTA 5, you find that they build in grandeur as the game progresses. So think of GTA 5, you start off stealing cars, and then you move on to robbing banks, then you move on to mass shootouts with all this loaded armor, and the game just keeps going up, dialing up higher levels. This game just doesn't do that at all. It starts you off doing basic things like stealing cars. You do that for about 2-3 hours. You'll do one shootout and then it'll just revert back to do the same basic stuff. Maybe beat somebody up or put a body in a bin or dump a body in some water. And it's just these low level, repetitive, mundane, boring levels. And although the gameplay is actually okay, it's like there's nothing to do with it, so what's the point of being in it? The sandbox has nothing there. All you can do is rob people, rob stores, steal cars, drive cars and shoot people. That's it. And that sounds like, that sounds like a basic game, but when there's no story, when there's nothing to do, yes, there's an upgrade system, but it's very shallow and boring. And the weapons are boring. It's just very, very average at best. Now, that still doesn't sound like that bad of a game, and I said I've got a lot to say about this game, quite a lot of it's negatively, and now the major issue is the bugs. Now, this game has been patched several times as of what I've seen, and the game is horrendously buggy. Now, I'm not lying. This game crashes for me every 2 hours, like to the point where the application has to close. So, you get a little warning on the PlayStation saying this cannot work, something's happened, it's failed. It just takes you out of the game every 2 hours, which is really annoying. But on top of that, there's also things like, you'll be driving through walls, the alerts get stuck on, so like you might have a level 6 wanted level and you won't have one anymore and it'll just stay on, or doors won't open, so you'll be trying to go in and rob somebody or something and it just won't open. You'll get your car stuck in like a barrier or something and you can't progress on the next part of the level. Some enemies just won't die, so they'll be invincible. It's a real buggy mess. And then on top of that, which made this game really, the icing on the cake for me, was that I was greeted by this lovely screen about 25 hours into this game. Yeah, that's right. My entire save file was corrupted and I had to start again. It just corrupted my file and deleted the entire save file. No! 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 Now, I have been gaming my whole life. I'm 27 years old now. I was gaming back in the memory card days of PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2. Now I can't really remember about them, but I definitely know on PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, Xbox One and PS4, I have never ever had a save file be corrupted and delete itself. It just didn't happen to me. I played a lot of games. Yes, some people are more unlucky than others, and this might not happen to you, or it might have happened to you lots of times during your gaming career or history, but it's the first time it's happened to me, and I found it so annoying because, you know what, not only was I close to getting the Platinum Trophy on this, I had to do pretty much the entire game again. Okay, so I have to give this game a score out of 10 in terms of gaming ability. I think it's pretty realistic. I'm trying to be as unbiased as possible, including the bugs, including the quite boring gameplay, and including the story. It's definitely a 4 out of 10 for me. But I played this game to get a Platinum Trophy, and it took me a lot of time, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, and the amount of time I played for this game really highlighted how shallow and boring this game was. So if you want like a 3 or 4 hour game, then yeah, by all means get this, but there's definitely better games out there, and to be honest, I wouldn't even really recommend it because it's so buggy. Okay, now let's talk about the Platinum Trophy. How did I find 100% in the game? So I didn't just get the Platinum Trophy, I also did all the DLC, which was free as well. Now there's a few stages to earn the Platinum Trophy. Basically what you've got to do is, you've got to finish the main story, there's a few miscellaneous trophies as well, and then finally you've got to get all the time trials and collectibles. There's a lot of collectibles. There is 100 stashes which are hidden across the game. There is paint, artwork, which you have to find, there's 20 of those. There's 15 flyers, and there is 20 jumps, and 28 unique vehicles you have to find, and finally there is 19 time trials and 10 challenges which are DLC. Now I want to say that I lost my save file, so I had to do the stashes and the flyers again, so I did those twice, which was frustrating. But there's a lot of collectibles. Now they aren't hard, there's guides online to find them. Without the guides, a trophy list would have been really difficult. But I've seen quite a few guides, and the guides gave this game a 3 out of 10 difficulty and 18 to 20 hour completion time. I just want to say that is an utter lie, a complete amount of garbage. I really don't like when people write reviews on these PSN profiles and websites like this, and they just underestimate the difficulty and the time it takes to completion. It really annoys me. It's like, you're not a better gamer because you're lying about how long it takes to complete this game. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I was 25 hours in this game when I lost my save file, and I was almost close to finishing it. I probably had another 5 hours left, not including the DLC. I think, knowing what I know now, I could Platinum Trophy this in 25 hours, but with the replays and playing this game again, it took me 45 hours to earn the Platinum Trophy in this game, which is absolutely insane. That's including the 100%, I should say as well. It is such a grind. Now, what I want to talk about, which is why I don't like the difficulty rating, is the time trials. There is 19 time trials, and they are so difficult. In my opinion, they are easily a 6, maybe a 7 out of 10. Now, I don't play a lot of driving games, and I do say that I'm not the best gamer. I'm a very average gamer, but if you're an average gamer, I can tell you, I can assure you, you will struggle with these time trials. So for people to say they're 3 out of 10s, it's laughable. Every time challenge has you basically doing a perfect run of every single race. Some races will only take you 2 or 3 attempts, yes, but some of them, I kid you not, took me over 100 attempts. Some of them are about 3 to 4 minutes long, some are only about a minute long, but I would say on average each time trial takes you about 20 minutes, so that is a lot of time commitment doing time trials, which realistically are difficult because you feel like you're always driving around on ice. As well as this really random thing where, although some of the time trials are quite controlled, so you might do like races around a track, but others have traffic, and the traffic is random, it's not the same, so it makes it even harder to practice for it because the traffic is going to be different. One time you might have a police car, which if you touch, you're going to have stars or wanted level while you're trying to do the race. It can be really, really frustrating at times, especially when you're doing like a 3 or 4 lap race, which has traffic changing all of the time. Now, it's quite obvious I didn't enjoy the time trials. I really didn't enjoy them at all. I found them really difficult, and I think it was more the fact that I thought it was going to be easier than what it was, and it really miffed me off. And finally as well, let's say the challenges for the DLC. So there's 3 trophies for doing the DLC, for destroying 100 tanks, for running over 250 vehicles, and for doing the challenges. Now the tank trophies, just to put out there, are grindy. It took me about 5 hours to get those 2 bronze trophies. And the challenge trophies, which involve like a tank mayhem mode, a tank race mode, and then like a mine road where you have to basically drive over mines at speed in time. And they were really difficult as well, and they easily took me another 5 hours. So all in all, I think it would take a newcomer without a corrupt save file about 35 hours to earn the 100%. With my personal difficulty of a 5 out of 10, it could be a 6, I'm not entirely sure, but I think maybe it's just because I'm quite a bad racing gamer, that's why I struggled so much, but it's at least a 5 out of 10 if you ask me. Now that brings me on the question of, would I recommend this game? Not in a hell's chance would I recommend this game. It is a buggy mess, that quite frankly I didn't enjoy playing after the 5-hour mark. It's a very superficial game, not a lot going on, and the trophy list is just an absolute nightmare. It's just, yeah, it's not the longest of trophy lists, coming at probably about 35 hours, but it's just not fun. It's one of those games where you want to put them down after 10 hours and you just don't want to keep going, but you know, sometimes that completionist side just overtakes you and just makes you battle on, and I knew I was doing a review for this, so that's why I struggled on with it. And that's it, guys. This is my opinion. This has been my review of American Fugitive on the PS4. Don't buy it. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, turn on the notification bell to stay up to date with my content, all that jazzy stuff, and take it easy.